leave a job that's not aligned. Now this is going to focus on kind of that initial telling someone something that could result in negative emotion, judgment, lash out, guilt trips. So it's going to kind of focus on that fear of the confrontation itself. It's not really going to focus on the kind of nuances of employment and like saving money before and all that kind of stuff. It's going to focus more on that quality of fear of confrontation. So for quitting a job that's not aligned, you probably have been feeling this for a while, but pushing it down because you need the money and because you have that mindset that you just need to last a little bit longer. But maybe you're at a point where you're just at so much overwhelm, or you're at so much pressure, or you're just constantly anxious and filled with dread. I mean, all of these things, you're probably at all of them. And so what you can do to prepare yourself for this is first know that once you've gotten this out, you only have to deal with this another 2 weeks. I mean, that's the protocol, is 2 more weeks of time. And you know, there may be some fear of even those last 2 weeks, given that you're abruptly, deciding to leave them. And I understand that. So let's talk about this. So initially, in a circumstance where you're working remotely, you will have to send your letter of resignation that's official, and then you'll have 2 more weeks with them, kind of maybe helping train people who will be temporarily filling in for you as you leave. And also if it's remote, you'll have Zoom calls, so there's that fear of confrontation after having made that step. And so here's how to deal with the fear of that. Know that most human beings are afraid of confrontation, to the point where, if you reveal this, there will be a scramble where people will also be so worried about a level of possible contention that they'll overly try to harmonize, right? So you're not alone in the feeling. Like, everyone's afraid of confrontation. People who are not afraid of confrontation are a little bit terrifying, just because they are either maybe they're kind of socially awkward, or almost so disagreeable and explosive that maybe they're the people you're worried about. So maybe you're worried about those kind of people. Or maybe you're worried about those kind of people who will immediately guilt trip and say, how could you do that? What do you think you're doing? Maybe you're afraid of that. Or maybe you're anticipating more passive aggressive jabs like, well, I guess you're too good for us, or who knows what it will be. You know the dynamics of your workplace. It may even be why you're leaving. And so when you're anticipating all of that, you've got to tell yourself that you're in a TV show, and that all the reactions you're going to get are they're just characters. Just tell yourself that, because in a way, they are characters in your life. They are just kind of reoccurring characters that came for this particular season, but they're not going to be in the full arc of your life and show, so to speak. And so yes, maybe it's intense and excruciating to be anticipating how they'll react initially and how they'll react in 2 weeks, but essentially tell yourself, they're not in my life. They're not in my life, they're characters. And to know they're just as afraid as me. So those are 2 things that really help. Another thing that helps is that in your letter of resignation, to definitely honor and show honor and respect for the experience you had and for what you learned. So have that acknowledgement and that graciousness within your letter, so that you are already coming at it from a very warm, appreciative, harmonious place. So you, in your letter, even if it is even if it's because of a hostile situation, acknowledge the lesson, what you learned, and show that level of graciousness and dignity. And so, in doing that, it already sets the tone for you being somebody that is operating with professionalism and civility. And so if you do get pushback, you can just continue to be grace. So anyway, you write your letter, and in there, you don't owe them a reason. You can say simply, this is the same with breakups, this just isn't a good fit. This is not a good fit for me. I would rather leave now than stay in something that is ultimately not a good fit or not in alignment. And I think that's a really good point. It's way more excruciatingly hard to stick with something when you've got the resentment and the passivity and even procrastination because it's not aligned with what you believe and what you want to do. Then, and in a way, it's gracious to, once you know it's not working, to get out. So even though they'll be put off by that, there's a maturity to it, right? And maybe there's another reason. I mean, maybe it's more because you got another job that's better, but you don't have to bring that up. You just focus on the alignment. Don't bring that up. If you've gotten like a book deal, or you've gotten something that you just want to commit that time, you don't have to get into that. Like, you can if you want to, but don't feel under obligation to share so much of a why. It can be a very succinct, broad, one sentence. So you sent your letter. It has gratitude, it has appreciation, it acknowledges that the experience was good, but it's just not a good fit, and you believe this is the time to leave. And then you also show steps in how you'll help make the transition easier by, I will personally train X person and to do these following things so that they can help with the transition. Or I'll write up a job description of what I did so that then when you look for future candidates, you kind of have that set. So those are helpful ways of showing, and helpful ways that are specific to the job itself and to the company. These will be the things I finish in this 2 weeks' time. And perhaps when you quit, you are anticipating hostility, but what you get is a lot of sudden, almost over warmth and regret, and kind of a reappreciation of you from people who actually weren't necessarily respectful in the job, but suddenly, now that you're leaving, they are realizing that they just kind of took you for granted as someone that would stick around. And that's great. And sometimes what happens there is that reversal is very surprising, because you're expecting the typical jabs and the kind of strange, almost little passive aggressive games, or you're thinking, oh wow, that's really great. And then you almost think, should I take this back? Okay, don't take it back. This is just human behavior. As soon as you're about to leave, suddenly it's the same with breakups. Suddenly people are already putting you on a pedestal, because and also there's a sense of need and scarcity, because they're a little scared they have to deal with doing a lot of things from your job that they don't want to do. So just be aware. Like, it's good to have that in awareness that reversal is natural. They might ask you, hey, can you stay on and do contract work? And it's up to you, of course, but don't feel pressured. Again, this is kind of about that fear of confrontation, and that fear of disappointing people, and fear of being susceptible to guilt trips. Well, so if you really don't want to do contract work, like, this is really, you really know that getting away from this particular job is the right thing to do, and you want to be away from it in all aspects, then don't feel pressured to continue with them on a contract basis, because sometimes the contract will still be so many hours, and there's a little bit of that hostility toward the fact that you left. So there's going to be there's going to be a mix of resentment, animosity, antagonism, that comes into play later, despite the initial flattery and hope that you'll do it. I mean, I'm just being real, because if in the event that you're leaving a place because of personalities, don't think that they've suddenly changed and that contract work, you're still halfway in what could be a situation that's going to be consuming and demanding and have all of that disrespect and lack of consideration that maybe be the reason you left. So don't be tempted to almost appease. You know, it's easy to want to appease because you do feel guilt because you're leaving. Please, like, allow yourself the time. Even say, when they initially ask, say, let me get back to you by X date, or I have to think about that and consider it. So, yes, because actually the thing is all the negative emotion that you're anticipating when you quit your job is actually going to be distilled, or it's going to evaporate, because your letter is going to have a lot of dignity and appreciation, and then you're also going to have that natural human reaction of, as soon as someone's out the door, they're more valuable all of a sudden, because they're not in that, it's like, oh, I took this person for granted, they are free to leave and they're choosing to leave, so now they must be really valuable. So just know that if you do get hostile reactions, that's about their own worry about having to do maybe some of your job duties, or just it's about their own self. It's not a reflection of, you are doing what's best for you, and when people don't have the to each their own, we want you to be in alignment with this and I want to be in alignment with you, then that's coming at it from a far too controlling angle. So anyway, these are all good thoughts to have when you're in it. Another thought that I have, it's kind of like when you view people as characters, is to just view this interaction as a dream. Like, this is just a dream, these people are saying this, but in a moment I'll be away and all is well, I am free. Like, repeat these affirmations, like, all is well, I am free, I am safe, and I am peace. I like to repeat those so that I just stay in a centered place that makes me feel like, okay, I'm not going to take on their guilt trips. I'm not going to take on their any level of negative emotion or upset that comes up. I'm going to acknowledge it, but I don't have to get into that appeasing and people-pleasing mode where then I suddenly take back what I said, even though it's what I want, or agree to contract work. It's kind of similar. I mean, a lot of this has a lot of crossover with breakups. If you're trying to break up with someone and they won't let go, and you're saying, and then they're kind of saying, well, how about if we just see each other this many times a week? Or how about we just like go back to dating or be friends? Like, you can't really do any of that. You've got to have that space. And anyway, and the truth is once you've gone through a situation where you were afraid so much to maybe leave a job or leave a situation that wasn't working, and you were afraid of that confrontation, but then you've gone through it, you realize, these things that I didn't expect to happen happened. Like, there was actually a lot of appreciation and goodwill. So it's not all just a big, scary, negative emotion, firebutt thing. It can actually be a great moment of just kind of graciousness and goodwill toward both parties. So once you've had that, you get way more comfortable with confrontation, which is very important, because confrontation is part of life, and avoiding it can make things so much worse. So I hope this was helpful, and have a good luck in writing your letter of resignation.